Hi, thank you so much for having me come here. It's the first time I've been to your very nice complex here. My name is Donna Gallagher-Stroh. I live in Novato, and I'm the director of Clean Water Sonoma-Marin, an nonprofit that started last year to stop the fluoridation of Sonoma County when the Board of Supervisors comes to vote in March of next year. And two, to try to convince the Marin Municipal Water District why they can get out of fluoridation. So to bring you totally up to speed, Wednesday night, they were presented 10 different ways that they could stop fluoridating. And the couple of ways that I'm gonna tell you is, the voters in 72 and 78 voted for an approved fluoride compound, which hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is what the Marin Municipal Water District uses, is not what the people voted for. They say that they can't stop the fluoridation because AB 733 says you have to put in an approved fluoride compound. That's not what the state says. The state does not say you have to put in hydrofluorosilicic acid. There's two reasons why they can stop putting the hydrofluorosilicic acid in. The third that I presented to them is that fluoride is an unapproved drug by the FDA. In order to put it in the water, it has to be approved for human consumption. They are using a medication to a population who is not given permission. If a doctor did that, they would lose their medical license. 4, the federal government we have a constitution. The 14th Amendment is equal protection for all. The way the state law, the state AB 733 that says we have to fluoridate, says communities of 10,000 connections or more have to fluoridate. And if you have less than 10,000 connections, you don't have to fluoridate. Now, that goes against the Constitution because the Constitution has equal protection. Listen to this clearly. Whether fluoride is beneficial or a toxin, are people being treated equally? No. No, the state law is actually flawed in its writing of something that goes against the federal Constitution. Okay? Then, the Marin Municipal Water District has what's called a precautionary principle in their ordinance. They voted for it in 07, which says, it's a simple page that says, from time to time, we know that environmental toxins come into our environment and we need to address them. Like you guys were talking about Fukushima when I got here. Yeah, we need to look and see, are we doing all we can to protect our citizens from these toxins? This is what their precautionary principle says, the Marin Municipal Water District. So I held that up Wednesday night and I go, your own board policy says you need to ask the questions. Is this really in the public's best interest? Have we looked at all the studies? Because that's what it says you have to do in their precautionary principle. They would not even do what their own board policy says they must do. Then the county has a resolution. The Marin Board of Supervisors voted in a resolution for the whole county that all boards, school districts, blah, 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 should use their precautionary principle and ask the questions. Are we protecting our citizens? Are we constantly looking at things that are being introduced into our environment? Are we looking to see if we have alternatives or ways to stop that? So at every level of government, this thing should not be done. Do you understand? Every level. This board, the Marin Municipal Water District, stood there and said, our hands are tied. So they're like, the only thing I could think of when I'm watching them do that is they're like lockstep. Where have we heard the word lockstep before I was born? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go there.
I know exactly
what you're saying.
You're talking about.
Yeah.
It's
They're not thinking for themselves.
Every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
Everything.
So
the wars.
Yeah.
The economy. The pesticides.
We've tried to do. So anyway, we have tried.
It's all
we
of
have
it.
peacefully tried with the organization that I created to work with the board. I've met with them all. 3 of them are still going to meet with me after that meeting. One of them ran up to me and they go, I really want to talk to you because we've been told by our attorney we can't work on this. So they're 3 of them are in fear of using their own.
Hi.
You're using their own.
This is the
thinking
meeting about
caps.
fluoride.
Welcome.
Hello.
We're having
Come on in.
a meeting about fluoride here if you'd like to join us.
The fluoride that's in your medications.
Oh, you'll be here until 4?
Until 3:30.
3:30.
And the good
Yeah,
part's about to
no.
come up. She's going to talk about the fluoride in your medications. You ought to
No,
stay for that.
We're gonna do some ceramics back there.
Okay.
We'll come back.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Anyway, I'm almost done. This is your party. I want to give it back to you, but I think an update of what happened at the Marin Municipal Water District. I believe what they want is they want to be sued. I do. No. That's what they actually looked at me.
You're right.
After I told them all the
Makes
legal
sense.
ramifications, they're like looking at me like, sue us. They didn't say the words.
They
I
didn't
guess
say it,
they
but-
did afterwards. I've had one of them say, "Well, you're gonna have to sue us." But I kind of like I don't like to solve things that way. I've been working with the humans that should care, you know. But that's probably what we're gonna have to do. But
would
thank
bring
you.
everything out. It would bring
That's
it all out in
true.
Yeah.
court and
The law is
honestly,
very powerful.
I
If you
know.
can get it on your side, it is very powerful.
And I appreciate what you said about the fact that there's fluoride in the food already. We pointed that out to them. Even the American Dental Association admits that when they started this 68 years ago, they said, well, there'll be 10% fluorosis. That's an acceptable level. That tells it's working or whatever. Across the United States, we have 41% fluorosis in non-fluoridated communities and fluoridated communities. That's including all the communities across the United States, which means it is coming in the food. So people are getting fluorosis from the fluoride from areas that are fluoridated and they're growing it that way. Or the sulfurofluoride that's on our nuts and stuff in our Central California. That's what they use. But they're stopped using that for a while. Anyway, so yes, it's in the food and we have 4 times the fluorosis they set out. That said it would be acceptable. None of it's acceptable, I'm sorry.
No.
No.
But anyway, there is naturally fluoride in the Earth's crust. And in places like India and China, a lot of that is coming into their water. So, like China produces the hydrofluorosilicic acid, but they won't fluoridate. They know how bad fluoride is because they have it in their water from naturally occurring fluoride. And that is fluoride, by the way, that is, it has already bound to calcium. Okay, so it's not as bad for you. It's all fluoride is bad. It's the most reactive ion on the periodic table. That's why they use it to activate uranium and plutonium in the bomb. It is the most active ion on the periodic table. Now, so when I say about it, I'm going to distinguish naturally occurring fluoride from artificial fluoridation in a community. Okay, because that's where we've been baited and switched. We've been told, oh, it's naturally occurring. It's already bound with calcium. It's not going to hurt you. That's not what they use to fluoridate with. They use an artificial fluoridation product, hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is a waste product from the phosphate fertilizer industry. It's a waste product. The EPA says it's a toxin and you would have to get rid of it a different way.
Yeah.
Do you know if Marin Municipal Water District shut off their fluoride right now? They were halfway through, they bought it in July, their bags for the year. If they shut it off right now, they would have to spend millions of dollars to throw away what they haven't put in the water. Because it's a toxin.
Yeah, well, that's what I've always read.
That's
with it.
why
It
it's
was
going
the-
in the water.
That's
There's nowhere
right.
else for them to put
So
it.
everywhere they're going
Yeah,
to turn it off,
they
for example.
It's the politicians to,
Yeah.
let us put this junk in your water.
Yeah. Well-
and then we pay them for, buying this stuff.
Right. So where they have successfully turned it off, like Crescent City, they had to use up what they had the way they were using it because it was too expensive to get rid of any other way because the EPA says it's a toxin.
Yeah.
So
Thank
we've been baited and switched.
Okay, so Shirley, would you like to start the program and we'll hear about your experiences?
Well, this is just kind of a personal family story about how I first heard about fluoridation. I was a young married mother in 1955 with a 1-year-old boy and living in Marin, as I had lived for many, many years. And my husband got an assignment to go to his company's place of business near Chicago for a year. So I went, great. So we went back there, and after I'd been there a couple of months, I realized that I was pregnant. So during the year that I lived there, I carried and delivered our little girl. And she was about 3 months or so, 3 or 4 months old, as we drove across the country back to Marin County. And in 2, 3 months, she started getting baby teeth. And they were dark brown with little beige flecks here and there. I mean, they were pretty awful looking. And they kept growing bigger. And I said, that later when I could kind of laugh about it, I said, people would say, what an adorable baby, what's wrong with her teeth? As if there, were no punctuation in the whole thing. And I took her to our dentist, and he knew that we had been gone for a year, and he said, oh, that's fluorosis. And, well, I was not that up on diseases and whatnot, and osis sounded pretty bad to me. I'd heard of tuberculosis, and I thought, you don't want something with osis in it, but he tried to tell me, oh no, this just, he tried to say, yes, it's just because her teeth, and we're forming in a fluoridated area. Illinois has been fluoridated for several years now, and as she grows older, you know, her other teeth will undoubtedly come in without these markings. Well, her baby teeth continue to come in and look pretty bad, but then they did start getting lighter. But the thing that occurred to me was if it got to her teeth, what about her bones? And I really started to do a lot of reading, but there wasn't really anything to read. There was very little. There was very little in encyclopedias or reference books or anything about the use of fluoride or fluorosis or anything like that. There just, you know, there really wasn't much to find out. And so, anyway, she grew up, and she's in good health, and actually her Mary Alberigi, and she lives near us in Belmarine Keys, so she got through it all right. But I would hate to think of what we would have gone through with her if we'd have lived in Illinois. And the people that do live there, they say about 10% of the people have some kind of minor or major problems with their teeth in a fluoridated community. So nothing really, nobody was fluoridating here, nothing was going on. I wasn't thinking about it for many, many years. And the other kind of personal thing I was going to get into was that in the 70s, there were elections here at the urging of the Center for Disease Control. And I remember that the Center for Disease Control used to send out men in uniform, and they walked down 4th Street and they talked to people very firmly about it. And they finally got the community to vote for it, to support it. And they went to the Marin Medical Society because the state law was that they had to okay it. They had to write a prescription for the community so they could have fluoride, which of course is a terrible poison, right? Just under cyanide or something like that. And that's not my department, but it was just unbelievable. So they appointed 3 doctors: Dr. Elmer Whedon, who was president, and Dr. Bill Galante, who later became a state officer, legislative elected officer, and Dr. John Lee, who was a very, very widely loved general practitioner here in Mill Valley. And so they were supposed to go out and find out what it was and whether they recommended it. And can you imagine, it was so new then, you couldn't just go to the computer and, fluoridation. And so John called our group. We had a little group that had been working to fight the election and whatnot as well we could. And so Dr. Lee called our people, and he came to one of our meetings, and we tried to share with him what little we had, and chatted with him about it, and we offered to help him in any way we could. We became his crew of secretaries and fetch and carry people, and he went over to UC Berkeley and got some help, and he came home with a stack this high of Xerox copies of research material so that he could read that and become better informed. And he was really, he couldn't believe the whole thing. As he'd read it, he'd put down papers and he'd kind of shake his head as what he was learning. And he did some wonderful research that was published. He did a food fluoride study in Marin County, because he figured it had to be in the food. And he had about 8 young people in different ages, young people 6 to 12 or something, and in his practice generally, and he would ask the mother to bring him feed the junior, and whatever junior ate, put the exact amount in the little plastic bag and bring it down to Dr. Lee's office. And so our group helped take one to each of the laboratories around the area, so it was all done independently and fairly, and they analyzed the daily consumption for fluoride. And those children were getting between 3 and 4 parts per million in their food. They hardly needed it in their water. And John did an article that appeared in the newspaper. I mean, in the medical journal. I know he was published in several journals at various times. And there was a gentleman in his practice, a retired teacher, that he would go visit his son, and every time he visited his son, he'd come home and he was just a wreck. He just had more symptoms, and I mean, he was still walking, but he'd say he was like the Walking Dead. I met him one time, And John would try to treat his symptoms and didn't know what to tell the poor guy. And finally, he had a longer talk with him after a couple of these spells. Found out the man was going up to visit his son in a fluoridated area in the northern part of the state. And so John had a pharmacist in Mill Valley pack a couple of big bottles of water, and John himself didn't know what it was, but bottle A was pure water, bottle B had the fluoride in it that you would get from drinking community water. And so he had this gentleman spend 2 weeks on each bottle and then tell John how he felt. And it was very obvious that he was being affected by the fluoride. So John did another article that was published, I think that was in the Western Journal of Medicine, one of these was, about this gentleman, not using his name, I guess he used his first name or something, but this gentleman was anxious to tell anybody about what happened to him, and that now he knew what was wrong with him, and now he could go visit his son and not get sick being up there with his son. So John wrote a book, and John was very well respected. He was asked to speak. There's an international fluoride group, and he was asked to speak through them in many foreign countries, and he did a great deal of work, a great deal of good to try to spread the knowledge that he had learned. And of course in the foreign countries they're much more up on it than we are. They would ask him to speak, and they'd all agree with him, and that was it. And so that's really about what I wanted to share with you. I brought a couple of the books here that I had from years ago. This poor gentleman did his work, Dr. Walbot, in the 50s and 60s when he wasn't getting, TV or very much attention to what he was doing. But he wrote a very good Struggle with Titans, The Forces Beyond Fluoridation, that all tried to shut him up. He was a medical doctor up there. And I had Dr. Yamianis was another man from New York who really worked with getting the country, getting groups, getting the country organized. And he wrote several books, Fluoride, The Aging Factor, How to Recognize and Avoid the Devastating Effects of Fluoride. Wonderful man. He came out here and spoke several times too. And this is one that has been mentioned a lot. He wrote this fairly recently, trying to bring the old history up to date and throw in some new things. He had a lot of publicity.
That's a very good book. That's a reporter. That's
Yes.
Investigative reporter.
So what's that called?
The Fluoride Deception.
Thank you.
And I got it through the library. I don't think the Marin County Library had it when I got it, but they ordered it from another county library. But that was a long time ago. That was, what, 7 or 8 years ago?
Oh, at least.
At least,
yeah,
huh?
it was. Yeah, it's
But still, it's
copyright 2004.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
Are any of these doctors available locally to come and speak to us? We have Monday meetings.
For the Seniors
For
for
Seniors
Peace.
for Peace. We get local people to speak on a lot of different.
Well, I don't know
subjects.
about Mr. Bryson, but of course Yamianis and Walbot, of course, have died of old age probably by this time. Yeah, and then these are just some other things that I have the Center Control the Cancer Center, Fluoridation Cancer Link. There's so much been written on this, and of course this is the Journal of the International Society for Fluoride Research that has the conventions twice a year, and I don't know whether they still do. I have not been, but these were all research papers, and the Chemical and Engineering News did a wonderful follow-up several times. They had things. This is another international society. These were a couple of Dr. Lee's letters to the editor that he really let them have it. After he retired, he spoke more. He didn't like to involve his medical practice too much, but so I just want to say I was kind of in on the beginning, and now we have another speaker who was going to let you know what's going on, huh?
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
Can I add one more book to her list? And that's The Case Against Fluoride by Paul Connett.
Yes.
And that's a 2010 publication, and in that it actually tells about the corruption at the state level where they tried to put fluoride in its salts on the Prop 65 toxin list, and the ADA gave the CDA Foundation money to lobby to pull that off the list. It was actually on the list to be a Prop 65 toxin in 2010. But that book that I just said will tell you all about that. So the case against fluoride, that is the most recent, and it has 80 pages of references in the back, peer-reviewed scientific evidence about fluoride, which, by the way, you should know about, because when you run into people that say, oh, there's only science on the side for fluoridation, well, there actually is no science on the side for fluoridation. All the science is actually on the against fluoridation side, but there's 80 pages in there. So if you ever have someone that says that to you, you can go, oh, really? And flip those pages. So I'd help you out with that book.